Welcome to Girard and Lake City, Pennsylvania. Located in western Erie County, along the southern shores of Lake Erie, these towns are filled with rich history and local pride. Join us as residents show and tell everything that makes their community a great hometown.
I'm Dave Pugh, and I come here to present a little bit of insight into the Battles family in Girard, which were quite instrumental in the town, how it developed, and the founding of various parts of it. Well, in the 1840s, Asa Battles had been a resident of New York, and he came with some saddlebags full of money, as I've been told, to come and put new roots down here and be a farmer. Unfortunately, he died a short time thereafter, but he did have a son, a teenager at the time, Rush Battles, who was then responsible for his two spinster sisters and an elderly mother. So Rush took things in hand. He had a nice farmhouse built. It was of a style that he saw in Erie, I believe at 8th and Sassafras at the time, and was quite impressed with. And he had an architect draw up plans to do the same type of architecture in Girard. So he built that and became quite a successful farmer. He went on to other things, though, a little bit later in his life, and he studied under a local attorney here by the name of Webster, and also, like I say, got into that profession. Having done that, he became introduced to the sister of Webster, and Charlotte. He ended up marrying her in 1861. So at that time, he saw fit to build a new house across the field from his first house, and he built that, and they were on their honeymoon. They were down south as part of their honeymoon, and took, I believe, a cruise on a boat for one thing. We're on trains, various modes of transportation when Fort Sumter was fired upon, and thus the Civil War broke out. And they came back, and Rush, being the type of person he was, kept very detailed records, and it's recorded he spent $280 and some change on this entire 3-week honeymoon. He then deviated from just the farming and the attorney business to found a bank, and that lasted well into the 1950s. He saw that throughout his entire life, and he engaged in several manufacturing aspects. One was a railroad company in Corey, Pennsylvania. He had a wrench manufacturing in Girard, which was destroyed by fire. He rebuilt it, and that building continues to stand. And so he was a very industrial, ambitious type of person, yet on the census, he would recall that his occupation was farmer. So he must have been a very colorful individual. They had several children. There was only one that survived infancy, though, and that was Charlotte Elizabeth Battles. And she was married for a very brief period of time, and then I believe it was annulled, and she came back to Girard and ended up being involved in the various aspects of Rush's interest. And after his death, she was, of course, responsible for the farm, and she ran the bank, and she was looked at as a very, very liberal woman, or very generous woman, I should say. She built a school up here that was standing till just several years ago, and which bore her name. And is noticed for her generosity and goodwill among the townspeople. But she was, like I say, well thought of, very kind person. The story goes about, but during the Great Depression, when the banks were ordered to shut down, that she sent a communique to the president that said, "You mind your business and I'll mind my own." So that's a story. I don't know if it's factual or not, but from what I've heard about her, I wouldn't doubt that she said it. But she went on till 1952, and then she passed away. And then the property, another 30 years, was willed to the Historical Society, who presently owns and maintains it. Prior to that, Rush was very instrumental, I think, in the development of Girard. And of course, he was probably one of the most prosperous people in town. Certainly, I think, owned more property than many people combined. But he had the foresight to see, I think, advancing trade and so forth, and was very instrumental, I think, financially and advocating the extension of the Erie Canal through Girard. And we still have that running through their property, the original basin for the canal, which railroad tracks have followed that, and down through town, of course, proceeding to south part of Erie, or to the southern shores of Erie, Lake Erie. So I give him credit probably for what Girard has become in many ways, of his ingenuity and ability to foresee things.
Hi, I'm Jim Stedman. I'm a resident of Girard, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the early history of the community and a couple of the families and their history, and they're all relatives of mine. My great-great-grandfather, Daniel Sayre, came to the Girard area from Connecticut in the early 1800s. He built a home on Ridge Road, later improved it, and it is now the brick home that's the first house west of the Ford dealership. We actually still have the Sayre family Bible. They were founders of the Universalist Church here in Girard, and the family dates of birth and death are recorded in the frontispiece of the Bible. My mother and her 7 brothers and sisters were raised in that house. Daniel Sayre had a number of children, including an Orpheana and a Lucretia, but he also had a son, Daniel. Daniel then had another family in the house, but they only had one daughter, and she was my grandmother. She married a local boy, Frederick Blair. Frederick Blair's family had settled on the South Creek Road. In 1803, my great-great-grandfather, James Blair, came up from Fayette County to take a look at the land. He found some land that he liked in what they called the Lake region. He went back to Fayette County, and in the winter of 1803, in December 27th, 1803, actually, he married Mary Wallace. And in 1804, he brought his new bride up to their new property, riding horseback 150 miles through the wilderness. They had their goods, such as they were shipped to Meadville by barge, and when the goods arrived in Meadville, they were dragged up to the Girard area on 2 poles behind a horse. Not even any wheels on this wagon, it was just dragged along the ground until they got where they built their home on South Creek Road in Girard. In the 1930s, the government did a thing called the Works Progress Administration, and they came around and tried to document the history of these areas. And they were able to document the andirons from that house, the mantle from that house, the window configuration, and there are pictures and there is information about the house in the Library of Congress, in the National Archives. At any rate, that was their home. The family grew. They had a number of children, one of whom settled on a road called Blair Road, which is between Girard and Fairview. They were instrumental in the founding of 2 churches. When they came here, there was no Girard Township. Girard Township was created by taking part of Fairview and part of Springfield and creating this new township called Girard, named for Stephen Girard, an industrialist in Philadelphia, with the hope that he would come here and build an iron mill. That's the first time it happened in Erie County. Many people remember the second time when U.S. Steel was going to build an iron mill here or a steel mill. At any rate, they named it Girard, so when my grandfather came here, or great-great-grandfather came here, there was no Girard. They founded the Springfield Presbyterian Church, which is now the Federated Church. Later, when the settlement of Girard appeared in the middle of the township, they founded the Girard Presbyterian Church, and my family was active in that church for hundreds of years. The fellowship hall at the Girard Presbyterian Church is still named Blair Hall in honor of the family's contributions to the church over the years. Because there were so few people living in Erie County at the time, many of them were interrelated. The Sayres, of course, were related to the Blairs, who were related to the Reeds of Erie Club fame. They were also related to the Cooper family, the Wallaces, and the Grubbs of Grubb Road fame. So all those families are interrelated in some way or other. I would hope that people today can find some inspiration in the hardships that were endured by the people who founded the community, and the understanding that nothing comes quickly or easily, but only by dint of hard work and determination and dedication to purposes.
My name is Judy Faustine, and today we're going to talk about the early development of Girard and the Culbertson Mill, relating it to other things that are happening in the areas, particularly in the Bayfront in Erie. At the close of the War of 1812, Peter Wolverton and his son Caleb built the first grist mill on Elk Creek. Peter Wolverton built the grist mill on Hall's Run. He also built the first dam, and he also built the first bridge over Elk Creek. In 1827, the Reed stage line was established across the creek from the mill with a stagecoach stop and a livery, which was a place where they changed horses. And in 1827, Peter Wolverton bought the mill. In 1832, there was a disastrous fire at the livery stables. They lost 15 of their horses and all the tack, and one of the other barns connected with it, the stop. In 1840, the Culbertson Mill burned. It was immediately rebuilt. It was under the ownership of Rowley at that time. 1840, another significant event happened, and that was when the Erie Canal opened, which was up the hill from where the mills and all these businesses were located. This was a significant event because most of the people that were down in the hollow, that they used to call it, moved up to be by the canal because that's where the business was. The 1865 atlas shows West Girard, probably again at its peak with all the businesses listed with their owners' names, and there was also a general store down there. In 1879, another significant event happened, and that was when Leverage had the mill, and he switched from water power, which all these other mills had been powered by, to steam, which sort of is evidence of the Industrial Revolution that happened about that time in all other areas. And again, it was another reason for all these people to move back up into Girard because they no longer needed the water power to power their machinery. In 1893, the Mill Creek flood came through the area, washed out the dam. In addition to washing out the dam, it washed out a two-story building and outbuildings that had stood behind the mill. They rebuilt the bridge and installed two stone abutments, which are still there that you can see. During the flood, in 2.5 days, 10 inches of rain fell, and the house that was behind the mill, the family that lived there had gone up into town, and when they came back, their house was gone. So fortunately, they didn't get washed away too. But in 1894, the iron bridge was completed, which lasted until into the 1920s. And you'll see in the late 1920s, the bridge was rerouted, and the sawmill was in the way, so it was torn down. This bridge lasted until 2016, when they just tore it down. In addition to the Culbertson Mill, the things that are still available to be seen are what remains of the stagecoach stop, which was called the Beehive. the Pioneer Cemetery, which is across the creek just at the edge of the Route 20 on the west bank of Elk Creek. Schoolhouse, which is across Route 20, and the remains of the raceway and some remains of the dam that was there.
My name is Stephanie Winsick, and I'm going to tell a little bit about the history of the Underground Railroad as it happened in Girard back in the 1800s. Well, if you don't know what the Underground Railroad was a system, kind of a loose system of trails and paths and homes and hiding places for fugitive slaves to move from the south when they ran away from their plantations, to move up to the north, and then ultimately most of them wanted to get to Lake Erie to get to Canada. The main conductor of the Underground Railroad in this area was a Reverend Charles Shipman, and he was the pastor of the Universalist Church, which is still standing on Myrtle Street in Girard, and still has a congregation. And this was back in the 1840s, 1850s, is when he started helping out with the Underground Railroad in Girard. And it worked out well for him because he was a circuit rider, meaning he would ride from town to town in northwest Pennsylvania, northeastern Ohio, and he would preach sermons at little towns and little churches. So that gave him a perfect cover to move fugitive slaves around at the same time. So he became what they called the superintendent of the Underground Railroad in this area. So what Reverend Shipman would do was just ride around and make arrangements to pick up slaves and take them to safe houses, or actually physically take them himself to Springfield, where you could get onto Lake Erie and get over to Canada. So Reverend Shipman had a lot of secret ways that he kept secrets and kept his activities secret from the public. He would never sign his name to anything having to do with the Underground Railroad. They called him Thribble X because he would sign 3 X's for his name rather than his name, so that he wouldn't be found out. And he had 2 close friends who helped him. One of them was Elijah Drury, the other was Henry Teller. Now Elijah Drury lived about half a mile west of town. He had a big farmhouse and a big barn, and right next to his house, it was situated on Drury Road, which is still there. There's a very deep gulch on both sides of Drury Road, about 15 feet down. So Reverend Shipman would take the fugitive slaves there. They would go down into the gulch because you can't see from the road, and they would hide in the gulch. And then reportedly there was a tunnel built between the gulch and the Drury's barn that these fugitives could go and stay in the barn. That's no longer there, but some of Elijah Drury's descendants remember playing in that tunnel when they were little kids. And there was really no other plausible reason to have a tunnel between a gulch and a barn. So it's assumed that he was using that to hide the slaves. So then Elijah Drury would take the slaves during the night generally, about another half mile west of his place to Henry Teller's home, which was on Route 20. It's no longer there. But he had a big house, and his house was situated around a bog where he kept pigs. He was a pig farmer. So he would hide the slaves there so that he could take supplies and food out to them, pretending that he was feeding the pigs. So he would put all kind of stuff in the buckets that if anyone was watching him, they would think he was taking it out to feed the pigs, but actually he was feeding the fugitives. So from there, they were almost to Springfield, so Henry Teller would then move them to Springfield, and from there they could get to Lake Erie and get to Canada. So that's basically how the route worked in Girard, and it worked very well. They estimated that probably 100 or 200 fugitive slaves got to Canada by coming through Girard. Well, I think the history of the Underground Railroad here should be a source of pride for the people in Girard. A lot of people have lived here for generations, so it's good to know that their ancestors, did something that was so important to the fugitives that they helped, and also just in general. And I think that a lot of people that I've talked to maybe have lived in Girard their whole life and never really knew this. So I think it's important for people to know that that Girard did a good thing.
Hello, I'm Rhonda Nichols. I'm the director of the Rice Avenue Community Public Library, and today I want to talk about the history of the libraries in Girard and Lake City and the current day Rice Avenue Community Public Library. The history started in Girard with libraries at the Wilcox Library. There was a group of progressive women in the community. They were traveling back and forth to Chautauqua Institute, and they were going to intellectual classes and speeches. And they came back to Girard and they thought, we need something like this in Girard. So these women got together and created a library association, and this was like in the mid-1850s. So what they did was they invested money, they bought books, and they went to private residence and checked out books and shared books. And then about 15 years later, these women got together and said, you know what, we actually need a real building. So they created an official library association, and for then, and this is pretty progressive, the board was ran completely by women in Girard, and they created this board and said we need to find a location. One of the women on the board was Mrs. Battles and her daughter. So Mrs. Battles' husband worked at Battles Bank, and it just so happened that he was also looking for a new location for his bank. So in the meantime, a man named Mr. Wilcox passed away. He was living in Illinois at the time, but he was a former resident of Girard, and he bequeathed money to a library. He said a library has to be built. It was $5,000. So the timing came together. This was the early 1890s, and Mrs. Battles and the rest of the board said, well, we can build this library, here's the funding. And Mrs. Charlotte Battles, her brother worked for Mr. Battles, and they also had him on the committee to find a library location. And he said to Mr. Battles, well, this would be great. Let's combine forces. You build a new bank, and right next to it we'll build a library. And it's gonna be this great place in town, you know, this fancy new building, very contemporary. And they said, well, that's it, that's a great idea. So they started, you know, building, and now we have the Battles Bank and the Wilcox Library. It was founded in 1893, and you can still drive by and see the sign in the stone that says Wilcox Library. You can still see the Battles Bank right next to its beautiful brick corner. That stayed in effect. The library stayed there until the late 1990s. In Lake City, there was a group of progressive women who were always meeting. They had a Tuesday reading club. And when that disbanded, the women said, you know what, we really need to have a library in North Girard, because at the time it wasn't called Lake City. So they went around door to door fundraising, raised $100, and created their own library club, is what they called it in North Girard. So they would meet again at private residences, and then this was probably 1936. A year or two later, they decided we really need to have our own permanent location. So they met with a man who lived in Lake City, which at the time was North Girard. And he had a lot that he wanted to sell them. So for $450, they bought this plot of land on Rice Avenue in North Girard. And then they decided, okay, well now we need a building, so let's set a budget of $1,500 and have this building built, and it will be the North Girard Public Library. So again, they went door to door and raised the $1,500. And by 1939, we had the North Girard Public Library. And then in 1955, they changed it to the Lake City Public Library. And then in 1968, they moved into the Lake City Municipal Building. And so they stayed there until 1998. So in 1998, the board directors of the Lake City Public Library and the Wilcox Library came together. They were facing issues of budget cuts from the state. Funding was going down for libraries everywhere across the country. And they said, let's come together and create one central library for the residents of Lake City and Girard. So they started putting together a plan. They found a old country fair building in Girard on Rice Avenue, which they were able to purchase for $140,000. And then they got a Keystone grant, which is a grant in Pennsylvania that helps improve communities. But they knew that ultimately they needed a total of $500,000. So that meant $125,000 needed to be raised. So all these residents and library patrons and board members came together and literally went door to door knocking, asking for money. They did aluminum can fundraisers, they did book sales. So by 3 years, they had enough money to finish the Rice Avenue Community Public Library, and it opened up to the public on April 23rd of 2001. The first patron was a really cute little 3-year-old girl that came in. She was the first one in the door. So that is our current day Rice Avenue Community Public Library, shared by Lake City and Girard. At the Rice Avenue Community Public Library, people come in, and I consider it more of a community center. We have the books, but that's not what mainly brings people in. Now they come in for the computer services, to be able to get on the internet, to be able to access Wi-Fi. It's all free for them. We create programs for kids, so once a week we do story time for kids. In the summer, we do weekly story times and bring in celebrities, local celebrities. Our policemen come in, our firemen come in, Seawolf comes in, our weathermen, they all come in, and it's just a great community atmosphere. We have kids who come in after school and they just want a safe place to be until they have to go home. And we have senior citizens who come in and they check out 20 books, but that's not why they're there. They're there because they want somebody to talk to. So we really consider it a community center, and I'm proud that our residents have a place like this, and that when they come in, they smile and they go, "I'm so glad you're here," and that we have a library in this community. And it makes you feel good. And at the end of the day, a little girl will say, "When I grow up, I want to be a librarian." And you go, "We're doing something right here." And I'm glad that it's something shared and that both communities support us.
Hello, I'm Matthew Duffy, and we're going to be talking with you today about the Girard School District. Well, you would think that Girard School District, it would make sense that the first building was in present-day Girard Borough, which it was. In 1809, the first school building went up, and actually the teacher was a young teacher, John Swan, 16 years old, who would be a sophomore, junior in one of my classes. So a different time, for sure. So in 1822, as the community was growing, a larger building was built right along Elk Creek, North Creek Road actually, right across from the Agway. And it stayed there for a long, long time. It served as a school for a few years as Girard started to grow, partially because news of an Erie Extension Canal and other reasons. An additional school was built, and that building lasted for several years. And then in 1850, the Girard Academy was built as a private boarding school. And by 1872, Girard Academy had disbanded and the property and the building had been turned over to the Girard Borough. And it stayed that way until the Battles family became involved, and in 1910 were really the leaders in the community at having the Battles Memorial School built, and those doors opened in 1912. Lake City now, Gaines Mills, Groves Mills, their first school, primary school, opened in 1884. Now, keep in mind that Girard and Lake City, there were various smaller schools that had existed, maybe around 15, but the Lake City School really began service in public school education in 1884. And that was a wood structure building, and in 1901, that building actually was torn down and a brick building was put up. And that building, actually part of it is still, it was rebuilt, but fit reconstruction. And that actually serves as part of the Lake City Borough offices today. Just a little bit of information on that. Lake City or Groves Mills School, actually, when it was turned into a brick structure, they changed the name to North Girard School. So you had the Battles, and then you had the North Girard, the primary schools, public schools. In 1925, it was decided to merge Girard and Lake City into one unified school district. And so the first high school, Rice Avenue Union High School, construction began in 1925, and its doors opened to its first classes in 1926. And so the foundation was really set for the school district, And then it was in 1964 when Elk Valley Elementary School was built. And with the construction of Elk Valley Elementary School, basically Battles and North Girard schools disbanded. That would be the school that serviced our primary students. So in 1974, our present-day Girard High School was built, 9 through 12 as well. And then Rice Avenue Union High School would become Rice Avenue Middle School. Girard, even today, still people remember that reputation as Title Town. Primarily boys and girls basketball. In the 90s and 2000s, of course, it was football as well. So that all really began with two guys. Not to take anything away from so many people that were such basketball fans in Girard and Lake City. Dick Holliday, who coached the boys team to 2 state championships in 1988 and 1990, and a long list of District 10 championships in AA basketball. And of course, Larry Sinetta, who has just retired from the girls program, whose paths were very similar, who won a state championship in 1998 and a runner-up in 2003 as well in AA basketball. So that is quite a feat and a lot of pride that Girard has in that. So in terms of football, in 1998, Mena George came to town, and we had just constructed a new football stadium. And so by 1999, Girard had won a district championship and won others after that. So the football program was revitalized, and people were really excited in the fall and in the winter, and to say nothing about all the other programs, not just in the spring with track and others, but in a full spectrum. And the community takes pride in that. It's really a staple for Girard School District.
Hi, I'm Heather Pure, and I'm going to talk to you today about the Elk Valley Garden Club. So the Elk Valley Garden Club was founded in June of 1929 by a group of about 15 women who felt that the major park in town, Wells Park, had fallen into disrepair, and they really wanted to help make downtown Girard beautiful again. These were the wives of business owners and also Charlotte Elizabeth Battles, who ran the Battles Bank and also the farming in the area. So she really took the club under her wing along with these other ladies and made it their mission to help restore downtown Girard, make it beautiful again. So the purpose of the club since its inception has been the advancement of gardening, the promotion of the development of home gardens, and the protection and preservation of wildflowers and public parks. Around the turn of the century, Joseph Wells, who was a businessman, had donated a plot of land in downtown Girard to be used as a public park. And somewhere between the turn of the century and the mid-1920s, the park fell into disrepair. And the ladies who would go on to found the garden club asked the town if they could take it over and help restore it. And not only did they restore it to being a beautiful garden, but they made it the first arboretum in this part of Pennsylvania. So if you can imagine very large fruit trees and nut trees and all sorts of flowering and native trees just south of the monument on Main Street, it looked a lot different than it did today, but it was a very big deal to have the first arboretum in this part of the state. So when we got started, it was a much more formal time. So gardening was not, as you would imagine it today, outside in your worst clothes. We do have many photos in our club archives of the ladies gardening in dresses and formal wear, and trying to make do in that circumstance. I can't imagine trying to garden like that today, but they were certainly trying to do that. And they did a very nice job if you look at some of the pictures of what the gardens looked like in the 20s and 30s. I also believe we might very well be the oldest public civic organization in Girard. The Masonic Hall may be a little bit older, but as far as publicly available clubs go, I do believe with our founding almost 90 years ago, we might be the oldest civic organization in Girard. In more recent years, we've received recognition from the nonprofit Monarch Watch for making Wells Park a monarch-friendly location. So we do not use pesticides, as little as possible, and I think it's probably been years since we have. We maintain monarch-friendly plants for both food and for habitat. We have plenty of milkweed over there, and we've generally tried to make it as friendly to pollinators and bees, butterflies, all of that as we could. So we have a marker over there now designating us as a monarch way station. We also received designation from the Pennsylvania Horticulture Society a few years ago for our work on Wells Park. And looking back into the past, we actually received some recognition in the 60s from Sears Roebuck for civic beautification and some of the public projects we were doing at the time. But probably our biggest recognition was we're part of the National Council of Garden Clubs, so we have both local, regional, and state affiliations. And in the 1950s and 1960s, our flower show that we used to host was apparently one of the best flower shows in the country. And for several years, we beat out the Philadelphia Flower Show for receiving the Pennsylvania Award for the best flower show in the state of Pennsylvania. So that was a very big achievement, and the ladies that were involved back then were very, very proud of that. And you can see that when you look through our archives. The size and scope of our flower show was phenomenal. For those that might remember the old St. John's Social Hall, which was just this big cavernous space, we completely filled it not only with flower entries, but full-size trees, Christmas trees. There were entries from local flower shops and mum farms. It was a very big deal to have a flower show of that size and scale in this part of the state. And we did that from the very beginnings of the club in 1929 through, I believe, the early 1990s is when we stopped having a flower show. But it was definitely one of the bigger achievements for our club to keep that going. And even in the early years, the very first flower show we hosted in 1929 drew almost 500 people, which for a town this size at that time was a very big deal. I think the garden club's important to Girard and Lake City because we help keep it beautiful. It's not always practical for the towns, municipalities to maintain public parks at the same level that expert gardeners could do. So the fact that we're lending our skills as gardeners to public service is a nice way to get back to the community, doing something we enjoy, and the community benefits because they don't have to pay for professional horticulturists to come in and make the parks beautiful.
Okay, my name is Jean Bryan, and I live in Lake City now, but I used to live in Girard. My husband and I came to Girard in 1958 after his father was killed in an automobile accident. I'm very interested in the home that we lived in because I understand that this was at one time a hospital, but history gives way to progress. It's now a parking lot. John was born in 1932 in Girard, Pennsylvania, and he was delivered by Dr. G.P. Spalding, who was a prominent doctor who lived in Albion, PA. I don't have any other records besides his birth certificate, and I can't find anything in history in the libraries, in the Historical Society, at the courthouse. It's never mentioned that this was a hospital, but without a doubt, I'm sure this was at one time used for a hospital in Girard. The upstairs of the home had 4 large bedrooms. No closets, but I guess they didn't use closets back then. In the center hallway was a small room that had quite a large sink in it and counter space with cupboards above and below. It seems to me that this must have been the nurse's station. It fits in with what I've learned of the history of the home. I talked with someone yesterday who said that there had been a really bad accident at the corner of Church Street in Maine, which is right in the local area. And she said that the person there that was in the accident was taken to that hospital and taken care of. I've also talked with several other people in town who, one 97-year-old man told me that he walked past the home every day when he went to school at Battles. And there was a sign out front that said Girard Hospital. So I'm sure that this is what it was. My interest in it is because my husband was born there, and I wish I had early on gotten more information about it. And because Girard is located in the West County, away from the two Erie County original hospitals, St. Vincent and Hammett, this would have been a very good boon for the town to have their own little hospital where people could go to have babies and get over illnesses and have surgeries. It's a shame that there isn't more information on that to preserve the history of the town.
My name is Bill Felici. I was an artist, toy designer for Lewis Marks and Company out of New York City. And I worked here in the Girard facility in the R&D department. There was about 18 of us, skilled craftsmen with model makers, draftsmen, and also electronics engineers. Lewis Marks at one time was the largest toy manufacturer in the world. They were all over the world, including the Orient, in South America, Europe, and also obviously the United States. But they had a wide arrangement. They were noted for their steel toys that they had made in the early 30s. Here at the Girard facility during World War II, they manufactured bomb fuses for the war effort. They also, during that time, had a series of toy trains that they manufactured out of metal, and then progressively went into the plastics era with the toys. I was asked to join a team. There were two model makers out of the Erie R&D, as well as three of us here in the Girard R&D that made a display for Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. We assembled it here, tested it. I was in charge of doing the color work and making sure that the trains themselves looked pristine with the printing on the sides of them, and also that the locomotives and the background looked authentic. And we assembled it here at the Girard plant, tested it out, and then it was driven up to New York City. And that was the same time that there was a gas shortage, so they didn't know for sure if they'd be able to get it up there without running out of gas. But they made it, and it did fly out to California to Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, and watched that. It was really probably the highlight of my career working with Marks. It had a real positive impact on the community. It brought a lot of money to folks, you know, to earn a good wage. And even in the slow times, they'd come back to work for the Marks organization at Girard Manufacturing. When it closed, it had a large impact on the community. Many of these people had worked there for 20, 30 years, and the closing of the facility itself was really a hard-felt impact. The folks there who worked traditionally every year, some were laid off every year in that layoff cycle. That was part of their life. Others who worked there full-time, again, that's where they had worked for such a long time. And the impact economics-wise on the local municipality, the different stores, was really severe. They were large, because of their employment figures. Working at the Girard Manufacturing Company, which in essence is actually Lewis Marks Incorporated, that I worked for, I worked with some of the most skilled craftsmen in the world. These were model makers, carving people who were able to carve toys right out of a block of wood, designs for locomotive for kids, and transformers and for power supplies. Our engineering staff was excellent. And that really had a real positive impact on me. For some of the engineers advised me to go back to school, and I did. I went to Penn State Barron for 2 years for a management certificate, and that led me into the plastics career that I enjoyed, and I've been in a plastics career for like the last 18 years of my life, both in production and in quality control.
Hi, I'm Paul Ebert. Today I'm talking about Grace Church and what it means to the community and what the community means to my family. Grace Church in Girard is it's an offset of Grace in Mill Creek, and we came out about 4 or 5 years ago. They had a Grace in East County, and they wanted to expand to West County. just to become a part of the community, to become more a part of Erie community, and they saw a spot where we could help the community and be a part of it. So we moved into the high school, Girard High School. The school has always been great for us. They've been provided a lot of help. They give us a space that we need just to have community to come in and give us a space to have our services every Sunday. We have about 150 regular attenders, and it sounds like a small, but we're just starting off. And every Sunday we come in. It starts early in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. We actually switched the whole lobby area over to a church. We pull out all the signs. We get the auditorium ready to go. We use the classrooms for our Grace Kids. So we have spaces for them. We have Grace Kids for children all the way from 6 weeks old all the way up till they go into the middle school. And then we have an awesome youth group, and we have the 2 services where it's just a place where you can come in, just feel welcome, come as you are. And if you are looking for a place to worship or to be a part of a community, more than welcome to come in. We also do things like fall festivals in the community, where we have it at WLD Ranch. And we have a cookout, we have a soup cook-off, and we have hay rides, things like that for the community. We also like to be a part of anything that's going on in the community. We are a part of the Santa's Coming to Town that they have at the St. John's Parish. And we provide free gifts that the children can pick out for their parents or their grandparents, and we wrap it for them, and so that they have a gift to give to their grandparents or parents. And those are a few of the things that we do in the community. My favorite part of the church is how in the community they are, how much of a part of the community. It's not just on Sundays where we're at the school. We like to do whatever we can wherever there's a need. That's what we're here for. And we believe, that's what we're all here for, is to serve each other. And the Girard community, I think, is great with that, is wherever there's a need, somebody's always there to help, and that includes, that's impacted my family, and beyond the church, the people just in the community, there's always someone here to help. And that's what we want to be a part of. We want to serve this community, be, again, a part of the church community that's already here. We're definitely not recreating anything. We just are again, trying to be an asset to this community.
Hi, I'm Sandy Anderson. I'm past Girard Township Supervisor. I held that position for 18 years, and I still volunteer and do a lot of work at the township on a volunteer level. I'm on the Planning Commission, and which is it's a fun thing. I enjoy it. And I'm going to talk about today my love of the township, the Lake Erie Community Park. The Lake Erie Community Park I consider the gem of the West County. It's 125 acres. Right on the shore of Lake Erie. We have almost a mile of lake frontage. The wildlife is great in the park. There's deer, eagles, raccoons, foxes, and if you're lucky, you can catch an eagle flying out over the lake catching a fish, if you're lucky. There's hiking trails and walking trails. We have a ravine there that has a neat little stream that you can hike down to the stream, and it's called Kelly's Run. And you can hike all the way out to the lake from there, but I would recommend you go to the west part of the park because there's a better hiking trail or walking trail that goes down to the water if you want to go to the water. But there's a lot of fun things to do there. The history of the park is really interesting. In 1939, a group of residents in the area from Girard Borough, Lake City Borough, Girard Township, and Lake City was called actually North Girard at that time. They wanted to find some land to build a community park. Well, they found some, and they bought it from the Carnegie Steel Company. And we have minutes from their meetings. They formed a nonprofit to run the park. And they started, in their minutes, they started buying wood to make picnic tables and built a stairway to the lake and made pavilions. So it was really quite interesting that it was just some residents volunteered in their time and wanted to make a park. So in 1941, the nonprofit thought that they deeded it to Girard Township because they wanted it to stay as a public park forever. So that was what they felt was, the best thing for the park would be having the municipality own it. So they continued running the park. The nonprofit board ran the park. And over the years, they started, the board, of course, would change hands and change people, and they changed the nature of it to allowing more camping. And it started to have campsites all throughout the whole park, all the usable lands, and the community didn't feel comfortable going there to use the park anymore. So the township challenged the board at the time to bring the park back to its natural use, bring it back to the public. So then in 2013, Girard Township was able to do that, and we restored it back to its original splendor. We've received grants to put in the playground that's there, improve that trail in the West Park that goes to the water, improve some of the hiking trails and the walking trails that we have. We have a grant to build a new pavilion, which should be going in this year, which will have a full kitchen and new restrooms, and it can be used year-round. We have a gas well in the park, so it'll have a gas burning fire pit in the pavilion, which will be really fun to use. So we're looking forward to getting that done. We want to make the park, Lake Erie Community Park, a destination spot, and that's what we're working towards. And there's lots to do in Girard and Lake City. The shopping, the small businesses, the restaurants, the farmers markets, and when they're open, people drive to new areas for something to see and do. So you have to have a balance in everything. So it's good to have safe roads and recreation, dining, shopping, and everything, but it's a hard balancing act at times to maintain all of that, especially when you're involved in a budget with your local municipality. So you want to have all of that and the great roads and we do have great roads, but you also want to be able to enhance the quality of everyone's life by having amenities and the assets improved from like Lake Erie Community Park. So we do both of those. We budget for both of those. And I feel that the community is really behind us in everything we've been doing at the park. So we're all grateful for that too.
Okay, my name is Lawrence Fiesler, and my talk about Lake City, I guess our town, if you want to call it that, is about how much of the property that is now housing developments used to be farmland that produced food. If you get down to the Lake Erie Bluff State Park and take a look at all the ground down there that's brown, they planted some kind of a grass down there that I don't know what it is or what it does, but all that land that you see down there used to be in food production. And now it's going, I guess they're going to let it go back to nature and do whatever it does. In the meantime, there were some very old pools down there that got lost that you used to be able to get out and watch the ducks and the geese in the springtime when they were coming through. And there were lots of other stuff down there to do. And there was food for not only people, but the animals. Okay, if you get down to where the Elk Creek Sports Store is and look north, there's Mariners Point down there, and then on the east side of West Park Drive, there's also a row of houses that are down there, or a real small subdivision. When I was a kid, that was all farmland. I guess one of the reasons that I decided to come up and do this little project, or at least help out on it, was because I always wondered what my father thought, up till the time that he died, of Lake City or North Girard, whatever you want to call it. Because since he was born in 24, and all the changes that have happened, all the farmland that's gone to subdivision, it was probably, I'll say 80% farmland when he was a young man versus 20% city, and now it's almost 90% housing and 10% farmland. If you go down to where the ball fields are in the community park, the ones on Route 5, if you get in about the middle of that and look south, you'll see a pine tree and I think a maple tree there. That's where his house used to be. And if you look at that now, that's all subdivision, And there's a row of trees that are up in the field quite a ways that blocks off the view of the manufacturing facility that's up there. That was part of my grandfather's estate that he sold off as part of the estate settlement back in whatever year they did that. But like I said, I always wondered what he thought, because I've seen almost all the same stuff being built in my lifetime, and it hasn't been that big of a change for me except for around where I lived. But for him seeing the entire town grow like it did, I always wondered what he thought. I mean, I don't know, I guess everything's got to change. The only thing I really wondered, I'm sure some of the other people around town, the older ones, have wondered is, what's going to happen when the last bit of farmland turns into a housing development and there's no food to eat? Because no one has a clue as to where it come from, because we've lost the dairy farms that used to be around here. We've lost the potato and tomato farms, and that food had to come from someplace, or it's coming from someplace else now.
My name is Walter Crosby. I was caretaker at Lake Erie Community Park, and I'm here to tell you how it came about as a UFO landing site. In 1975, they came to the council and wanted them to do a project for the bicentennial, so they came up with making a UFO landing site. So they had Jim Meter kind of headed it. The UFO was built, and they made a landing site for it down at the park, and they put it down there, and they had a big deal for the centennial. They had all the papers and TV crews from everywhere here, probably a couple thousand people down there. And I didn't live here at the time, but I was there to see it. And my father was in on it. And they set it up, and then they had a actual UFO crew come in a helicopter and landed. The aliens got out of the UFO and scared everybody half to death. And so it was quite a thing. They had it there for years, showing people came to see the UFO. And then a lot of stories cropped up about the UFO. So when I came there, we started having a spook in the park. So we incorporated that UFO into that, and we used that in some of our acts. And it was quite a thing. And finally it deteriorated, and they had to do away with the UFO. That's back when UFOs started being sighted, and they come up with that idea that they'd make a UFO and make it as real as they could. And they did. They gave it real press write-up and everything, and they made a big deal. And it was really you got to give Jim Meter credit for that, because it was a good thing.
Well, my name is Catherine, and I would just like to say, that I really feel privileged to live in Girard. I've lived here most all my life, and so I just wanted to talk about what Girard has to offer. Most women, like to shop, and they would spend all day long at the mall, but I prefer to visit the little shops like we have in Girard. Well, I just think Girard's kind of fortunate to have so many nice little shops. Well, like there's the Periwinkle shop in Girard, and you just know what maybe little items of delight you might find there. And then there's the Curiosity shop, and if you haven't been curious enough to go there, you should, because they just have really nice things there, and you could spend hours looking around at what they have to offer. And we have consignment shops, like the City Mission has a thrift store in Girard, and there you can find anything from a candy dish to a wedding gown. Last fall, I was, for a Halloween costume, I found a wig and a dog, so I was Dorothy and Toto
from The Wizard of Oz. So you just never know what you're going to find there. So I just want to encourage people to come out to West County, and see the various shops we have out here. Okay, while you're out in Girard or West County, you might want to have lunch at the Girard Diner. It's been around for a long time, and I think people are kind of familiar with it. So you would enjoy the Girard Diner, I'm sure. Heartland is another restaurant in Girard that's locally owned and a nice place for a ladies' lunch. Plus, they have a gift and wine shop there. I just think we're fortunate out in West County to have a lot of nice little shops to visit, so that you don't have to feel that you have to drive to Erie to shop. We have plenty right here at our fingertips.
My name's Betsy Korb. I'm on the Dan Rice Day Committee, and this is my 30th year on the Dan Rice Day Committee. Dan Rice Days is a very community event. It's always held the first weekend in August. It commemorates Dan Rice, who was a circus clown. He wintered his animals here in Girard, and where the Dan Rice Days is held, his house stood there at one point on the north side of the park. He ended up marrying a local young lady from the Girard area, and they would come back here every winter when they wintered their animals and they weren't touring the United States with circuses. And he was one of the first people where the Uncle Sam costume came from. The monument that is in the middle of Route 20 in Girard was donated to Girard after the Civil War. And it was one of the first Civil War monuments in the United States. This is the 53rd year for Dan Rice Days. It's made up of crafters on the south side of the park and various vendors on the north side of the park. There's commercial vendors, of course, but there's a lot of nonprofits, local churches, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and many groups and booster groups from the school district, be it basketball boosters, football boosters, wrestling boosters, the marching band. They all have booths during Dan Rice Days. We have many events during Dan Rice Days. One of the biggest is the parade on Saturday morning. It steps off promptly at 11 o'clock from the Girard High School, goes up Route 18 and east on Route 20 through Girard, and then it goes down Church Street. And we usually have on average 80 units as part of the parade. Now there's many other events going on during Dan Rice Days. There's always a 5K race on Saturday morning, and there's usually over 100 runners that come out and participate in this, and they've done it for many years. There's a softball tournament many times down at Girard Borough Park. There's been basketball tournaments, there's been bathtub races. Last year in collaboration with Dobler Hose, we brought back the water battles with the fire companies. We're going to have the reenactors back this year up at the Yellow and White House with the Erie Historical Society. During Dan Rice Days, there's always entertainment going on the main stage. We do have, we've had a juggler, we have magicians, many musical groups. The proceeds from Dan Rice Days, after we pay for things like entertainment and different facilities that we need, the tent and stuff, we try and give back to the community. And we do this through a number of different organizations. We give to Rice Avenue Community Library. We've given to the reading clubs both at Elk Valley Elementary School and Rice Avenue Middle School. We've given to Edinboro University, the local food pantry, and last year our big donation was to the restoration of the 2 cannons that are out on the monument. We do have a Dan Rice Day committee, and we're always looking for other people to volunteer and be a part of the Dan Rice Days committee, because it takes many hands to make this come off the way we'd like it to. I think it draws not only the people from Girard and Lake City, giving them something to do in their hometown, but we get people from all over that come to it. We've had in the past, we've had ancestors of Dan Rice come to the Dan Rice Day Festival and, you know, be in the parade and see the parade and things, so.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Greaves, and I'm going to talk about hauntings and urban legends in the Girard area. So Gudgeonville Bridge is one of the more, I think, widely known ones in Girard of being a haunted place. The story kind of goes where a farmer was taking his mule to be sold, and when he got to the bridge, the mule did not want to cross the bridge, being stubborn, and so the farmer got really upset and he beat the mule to death. So from there, they began the hauntings of, or the talking of hearing clomping through the bridge at night, thinking that it was a mule crossing the bridge. The bridge is still there, unfortunately. In 2008, there was arson and it was burned down, so it was a big loss. But now there is not a covered bridge there, but there's just a regular bridge there. Near Gudgeonville, with the cliffs that go down towards Elk Creek, there's a certain spot called Devil's Backbone that Girard people kind of know. There's a story there that goes, there's a little girl playing up with her family near the area, and she got a little too close to the cliffs, and the version I have always heard is that her family went to grab her and they could not pull her back up, so unfortunately she did fall to her death. So at night or at certain times when it's just right out, if you go down there, they've said that you could hear her screams as she falls down. The Battles houses have some activity going on as well in Girard. The Yellow House, which was the first house built, has been known to have a lot of different things going on. There's been things said that where Asa Battles, who built the house or had the house built, you could see him at night looking out over what looked like the field, looking out over his workers. Whether or not that's actually true, we don't know. There's also been sounds, different families have lived there that have taken care of the farm since he passed away. So there's also been lots of people that have heard children's voices. Again, you never know. There are people been in there where they've been taking tours, and the last person in there has all of a sudden gotten shoved, and nobody was there. People felt drafts when there was no windows open. So there's definitely indeed some activity in there. So it's just all in what you believe. The other house, next to the Yellow House, the White House, which Rush Battles also had built for him and his wife, which when he passed away, his daughter inherited the house, his only living daughter, and she lived here with her friend until both of them had passed away. So the house is also said to have quite a bit of activity. One story that I've heard quite often from different people, kind of in different ways, there was a man upstairs working in a bathroom, and he was all alone in the house, to his knowledge. And he went out, left the bathroom to get a tool. When he came back in, standing there was an older woman with gray hair. And he said something to her, and she did not respond, and then it looked like she went through the wall. Maybe. And so he got a little bit spooked by that. So he went over to the Yellow House where the rest of the crew was working, and on the wall he saw a picture, and it was Georgiana Reed. That's who he saw. So the White House has a little bit of activity going on as well. There's a story of Shep in Girard. He was a dog. His owners, his owners loved him and was very well, loved his owners and was by his owner's side all the time. And when his owner passed away, he became very sad. And there's lots of stories to how he actually passed away. One, I think, was that he was actually poisoned years later, not intentionally, accidentally. So after he died, he's actually not buried in Girard Cemetery where his master's buried. The master's wife, Mrs. Davis, had a statue made to put next to her husband's gravestone. And it became a big part of Girard, seeing the stone or the dog statue there. He was sitting in a chair. And I know as a child, myself and my sister and my cousins, we'd all go by and see who could find Shep first, and even though he's in the same spot. And in 1993, he was stolen from the cemetery and was not found. So they had a big search, the police got involved, searching, and here they found out roughly 4 years to the date they did end up finding Shep. He was stolen and sold to antique shops from anywhere from $4,000 to $20,000 all the way through. From what I've heard, he was found in Connecticut or New Jersey. It was one of the two. And they saw a flyer that Girard had put out that looked exactly like the one they were looking for, and indeed it was Shep. So the Girard townspeople put money together and actually had Shep sent back here. They paid for it. So now Shep is no longer in the cemetery, but he does reside at Girard Borough. Right when you walk in, he's always there to greet you.
Hello, my name is Jim Luther. I'm here to talk about the restoration on the Girard fire truck that we did a few years back. Louis Hanna was the force behind restoring this fire truck. He was one of the oldest participating firemen in the country at the time. And it was his vision to restore this truck. So Dan Etter contacted me, and between the two of us, we set up a program to go ahead and restore the fire truck. Louis was an active member with the Girard Fire Department ever since the beginning, I think. He was 96 years old, very active up to the time he passed away. And he just was a fantastic guy. Dan Etter and I became friends, and we always dabbled in doing body work and restoration work on the side. And Dan notified me one day, called me and said, would you be interested in leading a team to help restore the fire truck? And I said, sure, that sounds like it would be a good time. And so we set it up, and we got quite a few volunteers at the beginning. We had probably 20 people that stepped up to the program and wanted to be involved in it. So we had so many that we had to break it up into two teams. And Dan took one team, led one team, and I led the other team, and we'd work different nights on the truck while we could, weather permitting, because it was inside of a building that didn't have heat when we were doing it, so we could only work on it in the summertime, which actually dragged it out to probably almost 3 years of working on it. But it was a fun project to do. And I think we finished it right around 2007. And it turned out fantastic. We got it done just in time for Dan Rice Days. And I was able to drive it in the parade, which made me feel really good about the whole project. After we had finished the fire truck, they actually didn't have a place to put it in the existing fire department. So they had to store it in another building until they built the new Girard Fire Department, which is right down the street here. And that is where the fire truck resides, and people can go in and take a look at it. And then they show it every Dan Rice Days. It's in the parade, and it's always at the car show in Girard. It's something that is Girard history. It's their very first fire truck they ever bought. And the history behind it is just unbelievable. If it could talk, what would it say about itself? How many places it's been, how many fires it's been to, how many people have been on that, rode on it and stuff.
My name's Dan Etter. I'm the owner of Etter Funeral Home in Girard, and we're going to be talking about the Honor Project and our Hometown Defenders Project. The Honor Project began a number of years ago, and I forget the exact time, but I remember it was Memorial Day week, and individuals went to our local cemetery in Girard, took the American flag down, burned it, stomped on it, and hung it back upside down on a staff. And the Legion had called me, American Legion, and everybody was very upset about the whole thing. And so I was ticked. I was very upset. And I thought we need to do something about this so it doesn't ever happen again. It can't. And so we formed a committee. Local Boy Scouts got involved as well as a number of other people. Building Systems Incorporated, Tim Schaff, Nancy, and helped us kind of build a new flagpole, a new Veterans Memorial that would stand the test of time, and you can't vandalize those things. So the lanyard runs right up through the middle of the flagpole, so you cannot take it down. That first week, I remember gathering a number of people together, and I said we needed to raise $16,000 in 3 weeks. And as you can imagine, everybody's jaws dropped. And once the word got out of what had happened and what we had intended as a community to do with that or for that, or rather in response to that, the outpouring was amazing. It was almost terrifying for me because people wanted to donate to just a level that I couldn't imagine. We raised twice that amount of money in 3 weeks. And so with that, and again, with people like Tim Schaff, the Boy Scouts, the American Legion, Springfield Monument, those guys, everybody in this side of Erie County pulled together to make sure that thing happened. And it happened in a hurry. And so we were able to not only build those projects with the assistance of those people, but we were able to have literally an endowment for those as well. That now, when we need flags, we got them. You have a light bulb burnout, you got them. You have a problem or something that needs repaired, it's taken care of. And it's taken care of by the people of the community still, by the resources that they deposited into that to make that happen. So, and that's really neat. I mean, there are a lot of, in both cemeteries, I mean, there are veterans, and we have our Memorial Day ceremonies every year at those sites. And when you're standing there and you see all the flags that are of our veterans that have passed that are around it, it just makes you proud to be there. Proud to have done something for those guys that have done so much for us. The Hometown Defenders Project, I wish I could say that was my idea, but I stole it. There's these little communities down in central Pennsylvania where my great-grandparents came from. And I go down there quite a bit, as much as I can. And as I drove into these towns, they had these banners all up and down the streets. And one of the little towns, Renova, is just not, they're not wealthy people. And I thought if they can do that, we can do that here too. And it recognizes people in your own families, people that you respect and honor, and you get to see them every day as you're driving up and down the street. There's probably 150 of them up now. We have done no advertising other than what they exist. We were originally thinking of doing those kind of things, but it just wasn't necessary. Once people saw them, they wanted to do something for their dad. They wanted to remember their uncle. I can think of so many people that surround us in this little town here, like Bob Hott, served in the 17th Airborne, was outside of Bastogne during a siege, in December and January of 44 and 45. My buddy Tom, I mean, he served Vietnam, 1968. He was in the siege of Khe Sanh from the beginning to end. Lost a lot of friends. And these stories can go on and on and on. From World War I, any conflict, all of our neighbors, a lot of the men have been there, And for a guy like me that's never worn a uniform, I just think they're unbelievable human beings. I really do. And so if there's a way that we can honor them somehow and say we don't forget, I think we should. Again, when you see a community come together like that and with a sole purpose, it becomes very powerful. You can realize what you can do as a collective effort. When everybody understands how important it is, I think everybody does. They just sometimes need a push in the right direction. And so, therefore, I'm very proud to live here, to know these men and women, those men and women that have served. I'm humbled to get to honor them once in a while. You know what I mean? It makes me feel good that maybe I can do something for them when they've done so much for every one of us that live here. I really mean that.
I've lived in Girard all my life. I was born and raised here. I was born on the corner of Francis and State Road, and from that point I've moved about 900 feet where my house sets away from the corner now. That's so that's not really a long ways from home that I've been, but the community itself is really a safe, vibrant community when you live here. I know everybody complains about the snow, but the community itself is really a good place to live. There's a lot of, from the lakefront all the way out to the Gudgeonville area, there's plenty to see, and just the overall living here is really good.
Born and raised here and then lived most of my adult life here. And my favorite thing about Girard is the history. There's just so much that happened here, specifically in the 19th century, that is just fascinating. So that's what I like about Girard.
I have many favorite things about Girard. So many historical points. The Battles Estate, Miss Reed, the old societies and clubs. I used to belong to a neighborhood club that was from East Main Street, and the ladies got together every other month and brought a dish, and we conversed and had a good time. I like that part about Girard, that it is a small town and you get to know your neighbors. But I also like the part about the Dan Rice celebration every year and how it brings people into the community.
I think it's just a nice little community beside the historical aspects of the architecture that I see from the pictures, many of which I have from the 1800s. I can look down there and see the very same buildings and pretty much the same skyline. So I'm very happy to be in a town like that where so many have lost their character.
I've lived a few other places for a few years, and I think the one thing that always has set Girard apart to me is the fact that you can drive anywhere in Girard and the buildings have been preserved, maybe not perfectly, but everything still looks as it did many, many years ago. And everyone generally seems to try to keep it as beautiful as possible. Our parks have been maintained. No one has sold off Wells Park and turned it into a parking lot or turned it into a business. So we've really done a great job of valuing our outdoor spaces and maintaining the beauty of what we have here in the West County.
I like just being around Lake City. It's a nice small town. It's nice and quiet, a lot of fun. My most favorite thing when I was younger, and that would be, I don't know about the walk to part school being that much fun, but stopping and spending some time with my grandmother before school in the morning was most enjoyable. I miss the old girl.
Well, Girard and Lake City, I've lived here now for 30 years, and it's a very small town, comfortable community. I've raised 2 children here, my husband and I have, and I work in the local school district, and we've been very happy with the school district with our children, and it's just a nice place to raise your children.
For my wife and me, Girard was a wonderful place to raise a family. We had 3 children, and we knew the people in the neighborhood. We knew we could depend on each other. They had great educational opportunities. They had great recreational opportunities. It was a great place to raise a family. Still is.
I love Girard and Lake City because it's a small town and everybody knows who you are. They're so welcoming, and you can go anywhere. You can go to the post office and the grocery store and somebody smiles and says hello. And it makes me feel good to know that I'm raising kids here and that they feel like they're a part of the community. They feel like they're welcomed. There's not, a lot of bias, or I don't even know how to say it. I feel like they're just so welcoming of everybody, of all kinds of people and all types. And that's a great feeling when you're trying to raise a family. So I like that because I know that some small towns aren't so welcoming, but I feel like Girard and Lake City are.
I've been here for 17 years, and it fits. It just fits. It's a small community. People know each other in good ways, and you get to know people, and that's a great thing. And if as a teacher there's something I need to talk to a parent about, there's a pretty good chance I know them.
Well, the people out here are very friendly and nice. And then it has a history of Dan Rice and just of being a typical small town.
The friendships, the relationships, you can go down any street and you see people that are talking. Our neighbors legitimately care about how you're doing, and so it's just such a close, small community, and we have moved homes, but for my family, my girls have always said, we can move houses or whatever as long as we're in Girard and in the school system, because they have so many great friends, so many great teachers, and I appreciate each and every one of the teachers, because as a single parent, it is very nice to know that when your children go to school or go to rec practice, they are safe and they're cared about. And this community absolutely cares about the people that are in the community, and that they're here, again, to help. I mean, if there's ever a need, they are there.
My favorite thing, it's my neighbors. I think we're all one big family out here. Everybody thinks Girard's on the other side of the world, especially if you live in Erie. But to live here, with the churches and the other organizations, and again, those people that will come together. You need something, it's a phone call away. I've just shown you that. You know what I mean? You can make things happen in a hurry. Everybody can help. They will. If my car was broken down tomorrow, I could probably call 4 or 5 friends and they'd be there in no time, And the same goes for me.
My favorite thing about Girard and Lake City is the group of friends that get together every day. We go to a coffee shop, and that's what I like most about it. And the people are so friendly out here, very friendly.
One of my favorite things about Girard and Lake City, I've grown up here my entire life, and I love the history and the people that are here. And I love the community and working in the community, just knowing everybody and then saying hello and how are you, and being friendly and knowing what's going on. It's such a small place and everybody knows you, and it's nice.
Well, it's a very hometown community. Everybody is close-knit, everybody pretty much knows everybody. And it's just a friendly town. Everybody gets along with everybody, and I like being out in the country. This is out in the country a little bit, and I do enjoy being out here.
My favorite thing about Girard and this whole area is I love just the rural atmosphere of living out away from the city. You're close enough, you're just a few miles away from any kind of big shopping area if you want to do that, but you've got the quiet and the peace and quiet of in the rural atmosphere. People are very friendly out here. I'd recommend somebody to come live in this area highly. The park is my favorite location, obviously, Lake Erie Community Park. It's one of my favorite things to enjoy in this area. So I know if someone else comes out, they'll thoroughly enjoy it. The relaxing time at the park and listen to the lake, the waves lapping up along the shoreline, and I'm sure they'll enjoy it.
Well, I think what I like about Girard is I just like that small town feel. I've lived here all my life, went to church here, and I married a farmer, so we had a farm on Route 20, and it's just community pride. Girard's a big basketball fan town, and so I've just watched my children and grandchildren all raised here and gone to church here, and it's nice to be near a big city, but I'll choose a small town any day.
Our town, Girard and Lake City, is made possible in part by a grant from the Erie Community Foundation, working to improve the quality of life for all in our region by evaluating and addressing the community issues, building permanent charitable endowments, and promoting philanthropic and community leadership. The Erie Community Foundation, helping today, shaping tomorrow. Pratt Insurance, In 1972, Lou Pratt promised to provide policyholders with as near-perfect protection and as near-perfect service as is humanly possible. In an ever-changing marketplace, that philosophy remains. Agents at Pratt Insurance Agency aren't just insurance professionals, they are friends and neighbors, a part of the Girard community. Andy Pratt took over the business in 2012, and the agency continues to grow, now more than 45 years later with the same commitment. More information is at prattinsuranceagency.com. Our town, Girard and Lake City, is also brought to you in part by Burton Funeral Home and viewers like you. Thank you.